This is a serialized old border godless shrine from Arbitrary Remastered, and it's been torn in half. When I first started writing up notes for this video, there wasn't enough of them sold to get a TCG average. The now average price of this card is around $500. That might creep down or creep up, but either way it's not a cheap Magic card. And this image is, for all intents and purposes, real. It's not me faking it or anyone else faking it for shock value. There's a small chance of that with these things. But it got ripped up in a game called Flip It or Rip It. That's a game where you open a pack of Magic cards, rip half of them, reveal the others, and then slowly reveal the ones you ripped that you've placed face down to see if you have basically shot yourself in the foot. I first saw this post last week on Twitter from MG Malone sharing it. It's been on Reddit as well. It's an interesting topic because people really react viscerally to this stuff. Seeing Magic cards, especially expensive ones, torn up or damaged is something that people do not like or find incredibly engrossing, like a car crash. You just can't look away. So that's what I want to talk about in today's video. Both the game itself and how I feel about it, and the reaction of the audience. And also how it relates to the ongoing increase in cost in Magic. It's not causing it, but it does highlight it in multiple ways. But first, a quick shout out to Elgato for sponsoring this video and the ongoing content on this channel. I utilize their Wave XLR, which is their audio inputs, and an Elgato microphone to sound so sultry and sexy. And yes, sometimes I turn the gain a little bit too fast, so the audio files comment on it in the comments. The Wave XLR is a beautiful piece of kit with a click dial that can change between headphones and microphones on the fly, and you can also physically mute with a button on top that is but the tap of a hand. It comes with software that allows me to run all of my sounds through it, which integrates seamlessly with the rest of the Elgato ecosystem, which I use completely around me. I use their lights and their arms, I use the XLR, their software, their microphones, and their Stream Decks to run all of my content, from streams to videos. If you want to improve your setup, you can pick up any of that stuff via the Elgato link in the description below. I was using them before they sponsored me, and I'll be using them even after. But please don't stop sponsoring me, I love your stuff too much. So what is Flip It or Rip It? Flip It or Rip It is where you open a booster pack of Magic cards and you shuffle them. I'll take the token out. You shuffle them like this, so you don't know where the rare is. Then what you do is you take one card and you reveal it. Oh look, I saved this common Mortar Strider. Then you take another card and you rip it in half, which I'm not going to do. I'm just trying to build some suspense and some tension in the video. And then you place that card face down. In that case, I would have ripped up this wonderfully playable Faith's Fetters. And you continue until the booster is done. And in this case, we would have ripped in half an old bordered Dimir House Guard, and we would have ripped in half a Phyto Hydra. So really, nothing of true value was lost, except for the idea that damaging Magic cards is wrong, is something you shouldn't do. And whilst I don't necessarily believe in that sentiment, that all Magic cards are sacred and you can't ever destroy one, I do understand why people might feel frustrated at seeing strong cards or powerful cards or expensive and desirable cards, more importantly, get torn up. Why do people play Flip It or Rip It? Well, there's a huge risk-reward style effect going on, right? It doesn't necessarily heighten the reward in itself, but the risk makes the reward feel better. If you save a valuable or sought-after card or a highly priced card in the secondary market from being ripped in half, it feels grander and more spectacular. Meanwhile, the horrible feeling of ripping in half an incredibly expensive Magic card is also a huge adrenaline boost to both dodge it or hit it. Obviously, the sorrow and regret afterwards can hurt. Yes, it's basically gambling. Flip It or Rip It seems to be much more common in the Pokemon community. If you go looking for videos of people playing this game, the vast majority of it is Pokemon YouTubers, including some of the biggest as well, which is really interesting because it's so frowned upon in Magic, but it looks like in Pokemon, a lot of people just accept that it's part of the risk of opening stuff. And by part of, what I really mean is that Pokemon as a collecting community, because the game exists and people do play it, but it's like 90% collectors, they all live for that adrenaline high of opening the right thing and being able to slot it into that space in their folder to complete a collection. It's all about cracking packs and that sort of gambling high, essentially. So naturally, Flip It or Rip It heightens that, and it creates more of a spectacle. A lot of Pokemon content out there is not really about the community or the history of the game or anything like that. It's a lot about spectacle. And maybe I'm simplifying Pokemon content a little bit, but the spectacle of opening expensive things and doing extreme extreme stuff like giving collections away or opening expensive product is basically the biggest, not brand, it's the biggest genre of Pokemon content on the platform. So when the shock value of Flip It or Rip It can push that to the nth degree, no wonder it's so popular in Pokemon. And whilst we're on that point, here is a picture of some Ultimate Masters cards, including Mythic Planeswalkers, that have been cut in half by someone buying a pack in a shop and immediately going at it with some scissors. There's not even a game involved. They're dropping the gambling game just to make it pure shock value. And I think that's much worse than Flip It or Rip It. It's just quite literally for the shock value. It doesn't really add anything else. Before we get into the ins and outs of why people hate it and how I feel about it, I have to be transparent about the fact that I have played it in the past. Back in the day, I actually uploaded a video to this channel of me playing Flip It or Rip It with a relatively new player, because their reaction to the idea of damaging Magic cards was really extreme and kind of funny, and I don't know, it made for an interesting video. Or at least I thought it did at the time. I do look back on it with a little bit of regret. I don't think playing Flip It or Rip It is inherently as bad as people make it out to be. People were very angry on Twitter last week about the Flip It or Rip It scenario, but I do think I've grown beyond it. And I also think that the way Magic has gone over time has made me less keen on Flip It or Rip It. Now, why are people so upset when you rip in half a Magic card? Well, it's a play piece for a start that's meant to be played with, but there's an argument that the case of Flip It or Rip It, even if it is just a simple gambling game in essence, is a game and they're being used as game pieces. There is the element of people just not liking seeing Magic cards damaged, or on the very flip side of that, it bringing a high in itself. MTG Gore, which I'm going to do an entire video on, is this category of varying levels of damage to cards, from people white bordering stuff like this, or in this case, silver bordering it by stripping the paint to reveal the foil layer underneath, through to cards being kept in pockets through the wash and being burnt in house fires. There is a part of the community that get upset with the idea of just drawing on cards in general, especially more so the rares and sought after cards. Having them signed can be a downside for some people, having them altered also being a downside for some people. And a lot of the negative energy comes from this place of, well, the cards could easily be given away to a charity or a school or similar. I try to give a lot of my bulk away when I can, even just in my local store so newbies can play with it. So I get where they're coming from. But ultimately, there's so much Magic bulk, I think destroying bulk, as it were, isn't really much of an issue. I think the real problem comes with when you start destroying cards that are desirable or sought after. And with the average price of a Magic rare going down, that doesn't seem so much of an issue. But of course, the average price of a treasure or a chase lottery card has gone up, with serialized variants and alternate art variants, like rarer versions like confetti foils and such. The chance of you ripping in half something that's much more valuable, it becomes more common. And this is one of the areas that has made me less keen on Flip It or Rip It. My original feelings on it for years has been you can do whatever the fuck you like with your property, but Magic as a game has got more and more expensive. The sealed product has gone up in price, just on average, from the play booster changes right through to collector boosters and more expensive precons. Magic as a sealed product and as a game to buy and engage with, whether it be collecting or playing, the average price does feel like it's gone up. So to see people play Flip It or Rip It with the packs that have the expensive serialized stuff in them and tear them to shreds, the running joke for a while that I saw with some people was that they want to play Flip It or Rip It with Lord of the Rings collector boosters, on the absolute off chance that they tear in half the one-of-one ring, which would have been a really interesting scenario because I assume the card would have still been worth some money, even if it had been torn in half by somebody playing Flip It or Rip It. So ultimately, I'm not as down on the game as other people are, but I have become more and more opposed to it as the price of cards that you can rip in half go up, because it feels like it comes from a place of privilege where you can play this gamble where tearing up $100 note doesn't matter to you, where other people are scrambling, or scrambling is not the right word, it sounds so negative to people with lesser income, but people who don't have as much disposable income might not even be able to afford, like, you know, basic shocklands, whilst others are happy to tear in half a shockland with £500. And just to really get your skin crawling, your blood boiling, or maybe even just make you laugh, the Godless Shrine I showed at the beginning and that spawned this video is not the only one. This Godless Shrine was doing the rounds a little while ago and is now stuck to someone's deck box. I actually feel like I might have seen this physically in the wild. If I've talked to you at an event and you showed me this, comment down below, because I feel like I've seen it, but it might have been on the internet for that long that I think I've seen it. This is a Expedition Godless Shrine, which currently its market average price is $75. Ripped in half during a game of Flip It or Rip It, in a time when Expeditions could have come in just your normal booster packs. So again, that period of time felt more innocent, just a £3.50 booster pack, and in this case, you hit a wild treasure. Then we have the Godless Shrine that this video was spawned from, a serialized Godless Shrine. Several of these have sold in the last week, $500 and $575 and $550 just looking at them. So this is a $500 card. It's a highly playable Shockland in a retro foil frame with a serialized number on it. Oh, some people might laugh at where Magic is going, but I do actually quite like this idea that there are things to chase and that you can open it expensively from packs, even if they are from the premium packs only. Or how about this serialized 10th Doctor? Yeah. From the collector boosters of the Doctor Who set, the 10th Doctor is the most expensive serialized card from that set. And I've taken a look. Some of them have sold for as high as $800 a month or so ago, but the most recent one sold for $696. I guess to an extent it's not just the Magic players that are looking for this. There are Doctor Who fanatics out there who also would like serialized versions of the Doctors too. Imagine playing a stupid game down your OGS and tearing in half a $600 note. And one of the things I used to talk about with Flip It or Rip It is that in tearing up cards, it kind of disassociates or detaches you from this idea that these hold so much value, because the value is arbitrary based upon what we as a community give it, and when Wizards print it, it's worth nothing, right? They essentially create value or create a value that we're willing to pay on the secondary market. It's just a weird situation that I've always had this weird connect or disconnect from. Now, Flip or Rip It does damage that. It does allow us to step back and consider what that means. Why do we place so much emphasis and value on what is essentially cardboard? Cardboard that Wizards of the Coast can arbitrarily reprint at any time they want to. I say arbitrarily. On a whim, they can reprint stuff whenever they want to. And we've seen that recently. Cards that people thought would never go down in price are now sub $10 because a lot of stuff has got reprinted. But then we have these lottery cards. Cards that are artificially scarce. Wizards could have printed 10 million of the serialized cards whenever if they wanted to. Obviously, it would defeat the object of them being serialized and it would be a lie and it would be okay. But you see what I mean? There's only 500 of these because they stuck a stamp on it and decided only to print 500 of these. Hell, there's versions of this just without the number stuck to them, right? Those exist. These are not unique arts to this. I really do believe serialized cards should have their own unique art. I think it would make them much more special. Some people might disagree with that though, because then it means that that art is locked behind the serialized paywall, if you will, but I'm kind of okay with that. Game pieces for game pieces and the extreme cosmetics for the collectability of the game and all that. But I love the idea that someone could open a $500 note in a pack. Do I like the idea that someone could just tear that up because they want to play some game with a risk helps the adrenaline hit of hitting the good stuff? Not really. I don't like it. My feelings on the game of Flip It or Rip It have changed in the last, probably what's it been, 8 years since I last played it. There's a much better version of this that I prefer. It's called Iron Man Pack Wars, and it does involve destroying cards. So some of you are probably all out from the beginning of it. Iron Man Pack Wars is a game where you shuffle up a booster pack each, you lay it down as a deck, face down obviously, and you draw your opening hand of 3 cards and you have infinite mana. Play a game of Magic against your opponent, but if any card will go to the graveyard, it is destroyed, it's torn to shreds. And that way you can scoop out at any time if your opponent's going to mill you. You can also just decide that you don't want to play the rare in your hand and lose the game and keep it. It takes away the randomness element, so the bulk commons and uncommons can get wasted away, but the chase uncommons and the rares that you decide are like, I'm out. I don't think winning this game with this stupid Iron Man Pack Wars thing is worth me tearing up a card. This Jehoira here is in my mini cube, and it's from an Iron Man Pack Wars game I think I played with John in... It wasn't Bologna. I don't remember which GP it was, but I should have asked him before this call. But John on the Discord, after this we'll discuss it. Where did we play it? Was it Birmingham, Liverpool? Either way, it's a memory. Either way, I committed thinking, you know what? I'm happy for this Joe to get torn up and win me that game. And ultimately, I knew full well that because it's a story associated with myself and my Magic playing friends, it would be going into my mini cube, my party box, as I call it, because that is full of stories associated with me, myself and my friends and my adventures playing Magic. If you ever see me at a GP, see if I've got it with me, we'll play some games. But the point is that card is still playable in that format there. So I've got an excuse for tearing up that Jehoira on that occasion. I almost never play Iron Man Pack Wars, by the way, because it's a really hard game to win. If you draw a good card that would win you the game, you often don't want to go to the bin. You can scoop. If you play a big threat of a creature and they're going to kill it, you can scoop, or you can tear it up like some sort of sadist. Ultimately, I just think that with new kids coming to the game who can't afford to buy packs half the time because they're more expensive than they ever have been, I think the next time you consider playing Flip It or Rip It with your friends because you think it's funny or cool, how about you play Donate It or Not? I'm being fucking serious, right? If you get 2 packs for winning, take one in one hand, keep it. and throw the other booster to a kid in the room who can't afford to buy a booster, the youngest person in the room, or the newest player, someone who's just got into the game and isn't sure if they want to get really deep in. Then you both open the pack together and see who got luckier. That way you have lost that rare. You're not getting it back, the mythic or the rare that you've given to that person. There's a loss value that makes it a risk reward, but ultimately everyone got to keep the cards intact and no one tore in half a $600 rare. I don't think you're a bad person for playing Flip It or Rip It, unlike a lot of people on Reddit or Twitter were saying last week. I do just think it is somewhat wasteful as we move further and further into economic climates outside of the game and within the game that makes the game more expensive in many ways. There's debates that standard is cheaper, but who the fuck's playing standard? But I'd love to hear what you think in the comment section below. Is this the first time you're hearing about Flip It or Rip It? What was your visceral reaction? Or have you heard about Flip It or Rip It a many a time, and do you have a strong opinion on it? Let me know in the comment section below, and let me know if you want to hear about more MTG gore. I've got a whole folder of crap to show you. Some of it makes my skin crawl. And if you enjoyed this video, why don't you check out the one that's linked on screen now? It'll be to a similar topic, something about Magic that you may never heard of before. Or perhaps you just want a bit more insight into it because you've heard of it, but you're just too afraid, too scared to ask. Well, don't be scared. I'll be your guide. Take my hand. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one. Ta-ta for now.